Once upon a chilling autumn night, in the quiet, remote town of Willowbrook, lived a teenage girl named Petra. She was an ordinary girl, with ordinary dreams and fears. However, the tranquility of her life was shattered when an unspeakable horror emerged from the shadows, a monstrous entity with teeth for eyes. It all began one stormy evening, when the rain poured like an unrelenting symphony upon her home. Petra's mother had gone out to town, leaving her alone in their cozy, dimly lit house. As the clock struck midnight, Petra found herself wide awake in her room, unable to shake off the unease that had settled in the pit of her stomach. A faint, rhythmic tapping echoed through the house, and Petra's heart began to race. Clutching her blanket tightly, she stepped out of her room, guided by the eerie sounds. The source of the tapping seemed to be coming from the hallway, and as Petra inched closer, she froze in sheer terror. There, at the end of the corridor, stood the monster. Its elongated limbs, covered in slick, oozing mucus, twitched and contorted unnaturally. Its skin was a putrid shade of gray, as though it were decaying before her eyes. But what terrified Petra the most were its eyes, two gaping maws filled with rows upon rows of razor-sharp teeth. These teeth writhed and gnashed, giving the impression of eyes, and they emitted a malevolent, hungry glow. The creature emitted a foul odor that filled the air, a nauseating mixture of decay and something strangely familiar. It was the scent of her mother's perfume, a fragrance that once brought comfort, but now brought only dread. The creature spoke in her mother's voice, its words dripping with malice. "Petra, my dear," it purred, "come to me." Tears welled up in Petra's eyes as she realized the sinister truth. This abomination had taken on the guise of her mother. It knew her mother's voice, her mother's words, and it used them to taunt her. She retreated into her room and slammed the door shut. But the tapping persisted, growing louder and more insistent. The creature, or whatever it was relentless. It continued to call her, mimicking her mother's loving tone, but Petra knew better than to fall for its trickery. Days turned into weeks, and Petra's life became a never-ending nightmare. The monster with teeth for eyes haunted her every waking moment, whispering cruel promises and tormenting her with her deepest fears. Sleep became a distant memory as exhaustion gnawed at her sanity. Shadows in the corners of her vision seemed to come to life, writhing and beckoning her into the abyss. Determined to rid herself of this malevolent presence, Petra delved into old family records, uncovering tales of ancient rituals to banish dark entities. Armed with newfound knowledge, she gathered the necessary ingredients and ventured into the depths of her home's basement, where the final confrontation awaited. In the dim, flickering candlelight, Petra confronted the monster. The air grew heavy with anticipation as she recited the incantation passed down through generations. Symbols and runes glowed ominously on the floor, casting eerie shadows on the walls. With each word, the creature's screams filled the room, a cacophony of anguish and despair. The walls seemed to bleed, and the very foundation of the house trembled. Finally, with a final, powerful incantation, Petra banished the creature back to the darkness from whence it came, sealing it away. It let out one final, bone-chilling screech before vanishing into the void. The basement walls closed in around her, the darkness swallowing her whole, and for a moment, Petra feared she had sealed herself with the malevolent entity. As the days passed, Petra's life slowly returned to normal, and the horror she had endured became distant memories. But she knew that the darkness always lingered at the edges, waiting for an opportunity to return. Petra had faced her worst fears and emerged victorious, a symbol of resilience against the unspeakable horrors that lurked in the shadows. Though the monster with teeth for eyes was gone, the echoes of that haunting experience would stay with her forever, a reminder of the strength that resided within her, waiting to be called upon in times of need. And she would forever carry the burden of knowing that evil could take on the form of those we love most, lurking in the darkest corners of the human soul. The town of Willowbrook, once a haven of serenity, whispered tales of Petra's bravery and the horrors she had faced. People walked a little faster past her house, their eyes nervously scanning the shadows, wondering what else might lurk there. Petra, though scarred by her ordeal, had become a symbol of courage, a guardian of the night, protecting her town from the unimaginable. But even as life moved on, Petra could never forget the scent of her mother's perfume, forever tainted by the memory of that monstrous entity with teeth for eyes, a specter that had dared to wear the guise of her beloved mother. And in the darkest recesses of her dreams, she would sometimes hear the faintest echoes of the monster's whisper, a chilling reminder that the true horrors of the world could never be fully banished, only held at bay by the flickering candlelight of courage and resolve.